which is really hilarious because when I was younger I could not build it. But anyway, it's no different with the press and the police. And the police have not invested that relationship with the press. I think had they done that over the years, we might have a better... Look, I know it's not quite as simple as that, but...
I think there's a level of fear. I always got the impression that they were just trying to hide things and sort of...
Well, they were.
You know, just keep
I
us
mean,
on side.
but they were.
I think there needs to be more sort of bringing us in proactively to different things. But then again, I think the media in the UK specifically can be quite negative. They just
definitely.
They love a negative
story.
Bad
news sells, doesn't it?
So I think that's part of our problem. We need to try and deal with that.
But again, like I said about A plus R equals O, if you can assume responsibility in every situation, so if we can assume responsibility and you can assume responsibility, then we'll come to that like table from like the win-win aspect. How do we get this so it's for everyone's benefit? Like, because actually, do we really want the public to be living in fear? Do we really want that? Or do we want to reassure the public? Do we want them to... Because actually, we're all horrified by some of the horrible things that police officers have done, and we absolutely want that out there, and own it. And don't just say one or two bad apples, because actually one or two bad apples ruin the barrel.
Literally, yeah.
So, because there are, but equally, we do some great stuff.
You do.
That you would, you know.
Okay, I'm here with Maria Stanley from the British Overseas Territories Policing, part of the FCDO, and we're now at the end of a very, I think, intense but very exciting conference here, ending in Hertfordshire Constabulary HQ. Everyone is sort of networking, there's a real buzz in the room. How have you found this last week? You put so much work into it. What is your reaction now that it's over?
Honestly, I'm so inspired. When I had the original conversations, it was I was already intending to bring them over for the Women of Colour in Policing conference, because previously I've brought people over from the Caribbean and they've come to conferences and they've been the only people of colour in the room. And it occurred to me that actually we've got people of colour in UK policing, and if they're doing something, how about we join that? Because we do tend to interact or be more drawn to people that we see as being more like us, and also it'll hopefully inspire them to understand that actually black women can thrive and they do have positions in those senior ranks of policing. So we had some conversations, and I thought they'd take us in a few police classrooms and a few presentations, and that would be it. Oh my goodness, this is better and better organised and more input than most conferences that I've been to that they've spent tens of thousands of pounds on. So it's all about the people, and the people who've been involved in doing this are phenomenal, can do, want to make it happen people.
And what kind of, for you personally, we were speaking about sort of, you know, the people who say the yes. What sparked you to say the yes, let's do this, let's make it happen? What sparked you to do that? Intuition,
can I say that? I tend to be, yes, what's the question? That, you know, doesn't always go well for us, but mostly it does. And my boss is like that, so I saw an opportunity. I have only got so much capacity as one person running a whole programme by myself. I've only got so much capacity. Someone comes along and says, can I help you? Yes, absolutely, please do, because then the people who I'm trying to help get even more help from even more people. And like they said, villages. It isn't just about, you know, one person being an island, it's about people creating villages and community.
So this week, just to give a bit of a flavour of it, we've heard from barristers, academics, NHS, you know, victims of violence against women and girls. How important is it, you know, we spoke a bit about this whole systems approach to tackling violence against women and girls. How important is it to have all of these different stakeholders in one room in one event doing the work? How important is that?
I mean, I think that's the most important thing, because otherwise everybody's away working in their silos, coming up with their own solutions, which might be similar, but might kind of, but what about if we got together and they complement each other? So when you all get together in one room and you can do that joint voice, I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits, and my favourite one is win-win. And for me, when you get all of those people in the room, you find those win-win solutions. And ultimately, because we all want the same thing, we all want everybody in society to have a much more fair and just life. And at the minute, as I said 2 days ago, women and girls, and actually men and boys, if you want to go into that angle, aren't necessarily having the best lives they could have, and they're not being understood. And I think getting all the people in the room helps make that happen.
And of course, with this particular conference, we have our delegates from the British Overseas Territories, and you work closely with the work they're doing in those different jurisdictions. What things have you seen sort of in your work and your travels that you think we could actually learn here in the UK in terms of tackling war?
So, can we edit that out?
Yeah.
And start again? Right, okay. If we're going to edit that one out,
I'll ask.
can you just not ask in terms of title and vogue?
Okay. Yeah. So we're here with our delegates, of course, from the British Overseas Territories, and it's a two-way street we've spoken about in terms of the learning. From your travels and your work in these jurisdictions, what things do you think we can learn or be learning from our colleagues in the Overseas Territories?
I think we're going to learn a lot. One of the biggest things to me was how wise people are, sort of spiritually wise. So, I think a lot of things that come around now on social media, everything else, all of these. When I speak to the women certainly in the Caribbean and Bermuda, they're very wise. They know a lot of these things that I've just learned in my 40s, and they have got a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy. I see the way that they speak to each other, and also they're not afraid to hold the mirror up to people to help them help themselves, because sometimes we talked about tough love with Samantha.
Yeah.
Tough love's important too, and I see them doing that, and I see them being really honest. I like that honest approach. So and I think the final thing for me is that they still have a sense of community. It isn't all about the individual. It is much more about the community in those territories still, and I like that a lot.
That's so good. And as we spoke about sort of throughout the week, WOCIP is very much on the national agenda now. At the Labour Party conference, it came up. Yvette Cooper called it a national epidemic, a national emergency. In your work, sort of not just in overseas, but also here in the UK, what is the impact of seeing it now on the national agenda in the way it should be?
Do you know, I think until I saw it on the national agenda the way it should be, I didn't realise that it should be. I didn't realise the impact. And that's because we didn't talk about it enough. And that's because it wasn't on the national agenda. So for me, not only has it been an education, because my background isn't as a police officer, obviously I've got a lived background as a woman and lived experience, and I have obviously have women friends. But it's really brought home to me how important it is, how pervasive it is, how there's not a single woman that's in this room or probably on this planet that hasn't been formed to some form of subject to some form of vogue.
And just the last question on next steps. This has been, everyone's really been emotional, there's been tears, people are really happy about what's happened here this week, but how do we build on this? You mentioned a bit about a mentoring system. Can you touch on that a bit more?
Yeah, so I think you don't know what you don't know. And I look at all of my successes, and they've all been through someone either putting an arm around my shoulder and saying, you can do it, or I believe in you, or have you thought about doing this? And I think this is something that women in general, I don't want to speak for all women, but certainly I hear it time and again, the struggle with that confidence. We talk about imposter feelings, and I can definitely relate to that. Everyone that knows me thinks I'm super confident, and I am, but it doesn't mean that I don't have those imposter feelings. So I think we can, by talking about it, by getting it out on the table, you can then start to address it. Like I said about Vogue, unless it's out there and it's being talked about, you don't realise that how widespread it is. So I think we can take responsibility. My last slide, I'm really big on that. We've all got responsibility. We've got to stop looking, and we've all done it, to the person next to us thinking that they're going to do it. For me, take responsibility. You've been given the opportunity, you've had the door open for you. Don't just walk through it, bring somebody through it with you, and then they'll bring somebody through it with them. And if we do it like that, we can make things happen much more quickly.
Absolutely. And the last question, I promise this is the last one. Working with WOCIP, what has your experience been working with them?
I mean, it leads on perfectly from what I've just said. I'm going to repeat myself. It's the personalities. It's the people that are willing to say, actually, it's my responsibility. And they're not looking to the person next to them to do it. They grasped it, they ran with it, and they made it amazing. And anyone can do that. You've just got to have a little bit of faith in yourself, and that's probably the hardest bit. But stop thinking it's somebody else's responsibility. It's your responsibility. If I get given a platform, I use it. I told you before we came on mic, I used to hate doing these things. I was quite happy, very confident in one-to-one conversations, but media and so I wasn't. But actually I was given a platform and I started using it and it wasn't comfortable. And I kept doing it and I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And hopefully now I've brought some people along with me, and that's, you know, I'm practicing what I preach.
Absolutely, so good. Maria, thank you for your time, really appreciate it. Please enjoy lunch.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate being given this opportunity to expose the programme. Thank you.